now we are going to do flight instruments and some nav equipment. Part 91205, minimum equipment required for flight for VFR day will be tomato flames, altimeter, tachometer for each engine, oil temperature indicator for each engine, manifold pressure gauge for each engine, airspeed indicator, temperature gauge for each liquid-cooled engine, oil pressure gauge for each engine. Tomato. Flames. Fuel quantity gauge for each engine, landing gear position lights if it's a retractable gear, anti-collision lights, magnetic direction indicator, an ELT if required by 91.207, safety belts, and shoulder harnesses. For VFR night flight, all VFR day equipment plus flaps. Fuses, a spare set, landing light if for hire, anti-collision light, position lights, nav lights, and a source of power such as battery. For IFR day, you need all the VFR day equipment plus grab card, which we'll go over in a second. And for IFR night, it's all VFR day plus VFR night equipment plus grab card. So VFR day was tomato flames, VFR night was flaps, and now going into grab card, generator alternator, radios, two-ways and navigational equipment appropriate for the ground facilities to be used, altimeter, sensitive, adjustable for barometric pressure, B, ball, slip and skid indicator, C, clock, shows the hours, minutes, and seconds, and installed as part of the aircraft equipment, attitude indicator, rate of turn indicator, and directional gyro, also called the heading indicator. 91.213. If you are operating with inoperative instruments or equipment, what do you need to do? The aircraft has an MEL, which is a minimum equipment list. If it says yes, follow the MEL's provision. If it says no, is the inoperative equipment required by 91.205 or other regulations for kind of operations? Is it required by an airworthiness directive? Is it required by the equipment list or kind of operations equipment list, which is found in the POH? Is it required by the VFR day certificate requirements? If the answer is no, flying is permitted provided equipment is removed or deactivated and placarded in op, and that a pilot mechanic determines it's safe to fly. If the answer is yes, flying is not allowed without a special flight permit. Okay, next, gyroscopic instruments. Two principles of gyroscope are rigidity in space and precession. The attitude indicator operates on the principle of rigidity in space, shows bank and pitch information. Older attitude indicators may have a tumble limit, which should show correct altitude or attitude within 5 minutes of turning on the engine. Normally, the vacuum driven in a general aviation aircraft, and it may be electrical in others. It may have a small acceleration deceleration errors. Accelerate, it'll show a slight pitch up, and decelerate, a slight pitch down, and rollout errors following a 180-degree turn that shows a slight turn to the opposite direction. 2, for the gyroscopic instruments, is the heading indicator. It operates on the principle of rigidity in space. This was weird. All right, these yellow ones, if you're just looking at the 6-pack, is your gyroscopic instruments. So the heading indicator operates on the principle of rigidity in space. It only reflects changes in heading but cannot measure the heading directly. You have to calibrate it with a magnetic compass in order for it to indicate correctly. Some heading indicators are slaved to a magnetic heading source, such as a flux gate, and sync automatically to the correct heading. Normally, it's powered by the vacuum system in a general aviation aircraft. Then the turn indicator operates on the principle of precession. The turn coordinators show rate of turn and rate of roll. Turn and slip indicators show rate of turn only. As far as the electronic flight instruments go, the attitude heading reference system provides more accurate and reliable attitude and heading data than traditional separate gyro systems. The first AHRS units were very expensive and relied on laser gyros and flex valves. Today they are based on solid state technologies, no moving parts, and are cheaper and smaller and easier to maintain. ADCs, air data computers, replace the mechanical pitot-static instruments. The ADC receives input from the pitot-static and outside temperature ports and computes airspeed, true airspeed, vertical speed, and altitude. The flight director computes and displays command bars over the attitude indicator to assist the pilot in flying selected heading course or vertical speed. The flight management system receives input from various sensors and provides guidance to the autopilot and flight director through the flight. The FMS also automatically monitors and selects the most appropriate navigational source for accurate positioning, such as GPS, VORDME, or INS. The electronic flight instrument system, also known as the glass cockpit. The primary flight displays the flight data such as attitude, altitude, airspeed, VSI, and heading, as well as rate tapes. Multifunctional displays display a variety of information such as moving maps, aircraft system status, weather, and traffic. It may also be used as a backup for other displays such as PFDs or EICAS. The magnetic compass errors and limitations. A mnemonic for that is DV-MONA, deviation, variation, magnetic dip, oscillation, north and south turn errors, northern hemispheres, UNOS, undershoot north, overshoot south, acceleration errors in the northern hemisphere, it's ANS, accelerate north, decelerate south. The generic instrument taxi cockpit check is, depending on your aircraft and checklist, airspeed 0 knots, turn coordinator, ball centered, wing level when not turning. On turn showing turn in correct direction, the ball goes to the opposite direction of the turn. Attitude, correct pitch and attitude and bank plus or minus 5 degrees within 5 minutes. Heading indicator set and shows correct headings. Altimeter set to local altimeter settings or field elevation. Shows correct field elevation plus or minus 75 feet. VSI 0 feet per minute. Magnetic compass swings freely, full of fluid. Shows known headings and deviation card is installed. Marker begins tested. Nav and comm set. GPS checked and set. And if it's a EFIS flight deck, the PFD, MFD, and EICAS doesn't have the X message and removed symbol.